My 25F husband 23M is mad at me for letting our daughter 4F sleep with us. I am currently pregnant and we have 2 daughters. Only one of them is important to this story. This happened last night. Our daughter came to our bedroom asking if she could sleep with us. So I let her sleep with us. When my husband found out, he got mad and we got into an argument. I don't remember what we said exactly, but I know he was saying things like how she needs to learn how to deal with these things. He then went and slept on the couch. Also, our daughter watched us arguing. Our daughter has slept with us before and he never cared. I am not too sure what else to say. My husband is still currently sleeping and so are our daughters. Our daughter has slept with us before and he never cared. If this is starting to be a regular thing, he might just want to put a stop to it before it gets worse. He might just be uncomfortable though, and that's why he left to sleep on the couch. Talk to him. Only way to find a solution is to find out why he was mad. Co-sleeping is controversial in pediatric circles. It's worth understanding pros and cons and how they might be impacting your husband. One of my favorite things about my wife is that she made our bed a personal space for only us. Our 2 kids only slept with us on very few occasions. Sick, bad dream, and even then they had to go back to bed when they felt better. Our bed was our special place. I get where he's coming from. I think a good compromise could be walking her back to her bed, tucking her back in, and maybe sitting with her for a bit until she feels better. That's what my parents did when I had a bad dream, and it always made me feel better despite not sleeping in the same bed as them. That way she's not sleeping in your bed, but you're still making her feel safe and comforted. She needs to learn how to deal with these things. I'm confused. What things? Did your daughter have a nightmare? Was she lonely? It's really annoying to have to squish over in a bed that's probably meant for only 2 adults. Perhaps he wanted to actually sleep well instead of be a human pillow? As a child who was allowed to sleep with their parents constantly, every time I had a bad dream, every time I was scared, etc., I advise against it. I ended up sleeping in my parents' bed on a semi-regular basis until I was like 14. At one point I slept on the couch in their room every single night for about a year. I was probably 8. I know if they pushed me to go back to my own bed I would have been scared initially, but eventually I would have realized it was okay and I'd be okay. As a parent now, when my kids try to sleep in my bed because of a bad dream, we cuddle for a bit and I walk them back to bed after about 10 minutes. I will say though, while I understand your husband's frustration, it wasn't appropriate to have that fight in front of your 4YO. Maybe he's afraid of crushing her or accidentally kicking or hitting her while he sleeps. Our daughter has slept with us before and he never cared. Now he cares. Or else he's frustrated in some other part of his life. Which is it? Pretty sure there's not nearly enough info here for our relationship_advice. I mean, he's not wrong about having a 4-year-old sleep with mom and dad. Though he could have handled the situation a lot better. She's already too old for it and he's most likely getting tired of it. My parents made the same mistake of letting me sleep with them till I was 4 and they cut that habit off when they had my sister. They said it was too annoying sleeping with a toddler. IDK there are a few possibilities. One glaring one is that you already have 2 kids and are currently pregnant with the third. It could be that he frustrated with having to share the bed now, already knowing that you both are in for another few years of co-sleeping. Also, not a parent, but with how often my fiancé randomly gets hard while sleeping I can see how that may also be hella awkward and uncomfortable to worry about while also trying to sleep. You should absolutely ask him why he reacted the way he did. He could have been wanting some alone time with just you and that's why he got angry. My wife started that with both of our girls. I used to work out of town. When that changed it was a nightmare getting them back to their own bed. Friendly advise don't start that practice. Take your daughter back to her bed, stay with her for a while till she is comfortable. We had some short-term stress in our relationship but it passed, so will this. Good luck, Mom. He's right though. First, comfort is important. Second, at 4 years old, children should be sleeping in their own bed. Medium long term, there's literally no downside, and the benefits are noticeable. The only reasons to allow your daughter to sleep with you are that you like the affection and to avoid fighting with her. Those aren't good reasons. Was this new pregnancy one he wanted? 'Cause it doesn't sound like it. It makes sense that he doesn't want her sleeping with you. I went through the same thing, without the fighting, with both of my kids. Trust me, you don't want to encourage them to sleep with you. The longer you let it happen, the more difficult it is to get them to stop. I don't know why your husband got angry, but he's right about not letting them sleep with you. As someone who was able to get away with this for way too long, was traumatized by a crime show, I'd be worried about my theoretical child developing dependency issues. I understand your husband's frustration with having your daughter in the bed. Because that can stunt her growing, she may never want to leave the bed. Maybe it's not about what to say to him, but maybe you should try to put yourself in his shoes and see where he is coming from. The best way to encourage it is to never bring the baby to your bed. I put my daughter's crib in our room, and not once since birth she slept with us in the same bed at the same time. It was harder to do the night's feed and etc., but she is now 4 and she knows I will be in her room until she falls asleep, and then I go back to my bed. If she has a bad dream she calls to me and I come. Having a soft stuffed animal to cuddle with also helps a lot. I was even able to let her go to bed by herself in our last house, but unfortunately our correct upstairs neighbors are really loud and at night she gets scared by their loud thumps and bangs and other noises. Your daughter is very young and it might be that she's scared to sleep alone. When I was 4/5 I slept with my parents a lot because of this reason, and what my dad started doing was letting me fall asleep with them and saying, "We're right here, nothing's gonna happen. You are safe," before I would fall asleep, and then when I did he would carry me to my bed. It made me feel safe knowing that they were right there if anything were to happen, and when I'd wake up in my bed safe I also learned that I was also safe being alone. I recommend you try that. He has a responsibility to act like an adult and father and participate in comforting a child after a nightmare. Yes, it's frustrating, but throwing a temper tantrum and probably causing your daughter to feel responsible is wrong on so many levels. He needs to apologize and explain he was tired and frustrated and will always be there to help. Both of you need to sit down and, without arguing or blaming, come up with a plan for the next time this happens. Stop. Your child needs to learn to sleep alone. I have 3 children and they never slept with us. 2 of them are adults and 1 is a teen, and they are well adjusted and just fine even though they didn't sleep with us. And my husband and I have been married for 23 years and are as happy today as we were when we married. I grew up in a scary house and slept with someone my whole childhood until we moved out of the house. I didn't sleep in the same bed but on the floor on my mom's side. So that may be an alternative. I don't think kids should co-sleep with a married couple past a certain age. I'm gonna rack up some serious downvotes for this, not that I give a shit, but I'm a huge fan of co-sleeping. We did family bed for years and I think it was the reason our son had 0 nightmares and was overall super easy as a kid. When we spent nights at family or friends' houses where kids were not allowed in the parents' bed, it was eye-opening. No one got any sleep in those families. It was a constant parade of crying, yelling, parents going back and forth to the kids' rooms, torture. In contrast to the 3 of us snuggled securely, sleeping blissfully together and waking up refreshed. Oh, and as for sex, that's what naps, grandparents, and babysitters are for. New parents are too tired for sex at night anyway, best to plan it for when you're awake and lively. It isn't cool to act out in front of the child regardless. You are examples for her on how to be and how the other gender is supposed to be. No little girl needs to see confusing treatment of her mother by her father. This is bad for them. As far as needing to deal with things on their own, I agree to a point, but I wouldn't have made a scene. I would have just tucked my daughter back in like a loving father would. Man, I wish I had a kid. That sounds so fun. My thoughts are everyone sleeps differently, maybe he just can't sleep well with an extra person. I am an extremely light sleeper and can't fall asleep unless I'm in a comfortable position I like. Some people hit the bed and are asleep instantly. My boyfriend is like that and it makes no sense to me. I can't even sleep with my cat or my chihuahua on my bed because I am unable to change positions and stretch out like I need. The other big thing for me is that my bed is my safe space away from everything else. It is where I go to have peace and rest. A child in the mix would ruin that for me. I would probably have had a worse reaction than your husband tbh. He's 23 years old with a third child on the way. He's probably a little panicked with the scenario, and overreacting a little about the sleeping situation. Comfort your daughter, absolutely, but put her back in her own bed. Your husband is stressed or frustrated quite obviously. I don't know what your sex life is like, but it sounds to me like he was probably in the mood for sex, and obviously your daughter's presence in the room is getting in the way of physical intimacy between you and your husband. Sexual frustration really sucks. I know you love your daughter, but she's old enough to sleep in her own room. It depends how the kid sleeps. Mine would rotate in circles and kick, and you'd end up with a 6-inch ledge on the edge while he would throw out heat like a gas heater on high. He slept great. Me not so much. Not something I could take real often because I was the one up at 6 a.m. going to work while they were all sleeping in. Granted, he could put it in terms like, I really don't sleep well with the kids in the bed, and that should be sufficient information rather than getting mad. I will readily admit I'm not a happy camper when I get woken up, either because sleep is one of those precious commodities I don't get enough of. She's 4 and scared. It really baffles me how adults value their nighttime companionship as a couple so much, e.g. it is an intimate time, a special time, a time for the two of us. Yet expect young children to cope on their own. Your husband literally threw a temper tantrum. Doesn't he need to learn to deal with his emotions? This is not helping your daughter get past this. Nightlight, stay with her until she falls asleep, soothing lullaby music. Lots of ideas out there. Your daughter developing a bad habit and not overcoming her problem is not good for her and affects everyone. Don't encourage this further. My youngest would go sleep by his mother while I was finishing up things at night. I just went in and picked him up and put him in his bed. He stayed there all night. Think the father overreacted. Might be a deeper issue. Talk about it away from the kids. Such a first world problem. In half the world, everyone sleep in the same room or the same bed. I just wonder if all these researchers ever take third world countries into consideration. Contraception. Everyone is mentioning being messed up or too dependent from being allowed to sleep in their parents' beds, but occasionally sharing a bed after a nightmare is not going to mess up your child. Mum always kept letting my sister sleep with her, and now she's nearly 10, cracks tantrums that last 2 hours if she doesn't like her sleep with her. My stepdad is sick of it. He wants to be alone with his fiancée. It causes problems in their marriage because of it. Don't end up like this or I'm going to feel sorry for you as you feel the consequences of your actions. I would suggest to him that he handle it in the future instead of storming off to the couch. He is just as much her parent as you are. When my kids got too big to sleep comfortably with us, maybe about 2 years old, I would make a little pallet in the floor next to the bed. That way they didn't feel alone, but it wasn't inviting enough unless they really had a fright. After a while, they wouldn't even wake us up, just bring in a pillow and blanket and go back to sleep. There is a post similar to this, but the husband is telling the story. I don't know much about co-sleeping consistently, but I definitely think once in a while isn't a problem, especially if she had a nightmare or something like that. I think you guys need to have a serious conversation. We've always practiced safe bed sharing with our kids, when they want to sleep in our bed. I'd be crushed to be married to someone that would send a kid who had a nightmare out of the room alone. So, I'd talk with him. I know a lot of couples fight about this, but communication is key. We love our kids' snuggles, but if it's a huge deal to him, maybe you could get a cot for her to sleep on near your bed anytime she needs to sleep in your room. Just guessing here. But pregnancy is tough for both partners. Yeah, I know the part of the man is nearly insignificant to the woman's part, but lack of intimacy and sex can do stuff to your mood. I remember after months and months that I felt neglected and eventually was thinking of, well, cheating. Lack of communication was a big part in this. My wife's head was somewhere completely different, but to me this part of the relationship just got cut. It is unacceptable for him to behave like a child, and he should have already learned to deal with his own children, not the other way around. A 4-year-old still needs mama once in a while. If she was 8, hubby would be somewhat right. At 4, cut the child some slack. Good mom.